Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. I'm Michael James, your host for this morning's edition, and we are recording on Friday, the 16th of September for the week of September 17th. And we have a number of really wonderful guests this morning. We're going to have the longtime labor organizer, Clem Balanoff, giving us an update on how he sees the elections going around the country. And then we're going to have the founder of the Indigenous Peoples Day movement here in Chicago, Les Begay, coming on. And we're going to round it all out with a news tune by our pal Michael Piranha McGraw, all the way from Honolulu. He's getting up real early to do that. A couple of things happened to me this week that I'll share. One was the passing of a longtime friend, David Lovell. We go back to seventh grade. You know, that would have been like 56, I think, 1956. We were both founders of the Downshifters Hot Rod Club in Westport, Connecticut. Dave was quite a guy. I remember he had a 1937 Indian motorcycle that he worked on. I remember his mom fixing junket for us. That was something like a kind of a milk custardy thing. And his dad, the famed Western artist Tom Lovell, used to come out of the studio, and I love seeing the pictures he was working on. Dave was living up in Vermont. He was a ham radio operator, a wonderful guy, and we're really sorry to hear that he has passed on. On the voting front, people, if you're sitting around like I often have been, it's time to get out and get petitions for your candidates of choice. I'm collecting for Maria Hadden for alderwoman in the February elections coming up. And there's a lot of work to do on the current midterm elections coming up. And we'll hear more about that when Clem Balanoff comes on. Emilio filled in some of the stuff here, and updated booster shots are now available. On the immigration front, people are moving because of environmental conditions, political conditions all around the world. People trying to come into the United States are not just Mexicans or Central Americans, but people from everywhere. And as this crisis, which is a world crisis, heats up, we have the right-wing governors, Abbott in Texas and DeSantis in Florida, sending immigrants to the vice president's home in D.C., to Washington, D.C., to Chicago, to New York, and up there in Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, or one of those places. I'd like to give a shout out to the Patagonia founder, Yvon Chouinard. He is giving away the company. So all profits from my 5-inch baggies that I buy, those are shorts, will now go to fighting environmental conditions. And I think this is really wonderful. A guy with a lot of dough, who's made a lot of dough off of people who probably listen to this show, is going to put it all to really good work. And that's a wonderful thing. Take note, a federal judge has appointed a special master to review the documents seized at Mar-a-Lago. And there's a lot of criticism of the judge and how she's gone about this. You can watch the news and find out a lot more. On the labor front, I've been bugging my friend who's been on the show, Bob Lawson, on a weekly basis. He sent me a link to a thing called the heydayreport.com. If you go to paydayreport.com, they cover labor news and what they call a news desert for labor. And on the labor front, we know that rail unions and management have reached a tentative agreement to avoid a strike that would really have had a big impact on the economy. It's not a done deal yet. I'm not sure if the machinists, how they're going to vote, but it looks like there certainly is not a strike starting today, which would be Friday. In Lordstown, Ohio, battery workers are set to go on strike. A tentative deal has ended the Seattle teacher strike of 6,000, and 15,000 nurses in Minnesota are back on the job. Internationally, Putin and Xi Jinping of China have met on Thursday after Russia suffered huge setbacks, losing more territory in 5 days than they had gained in 5 months. Xi hasn't denounced the invasion of the Ukraine, although he has expressed concerns about the major failures of Russia's military. Also, there's a mass grave been discovered. So that's a whole other issue about the number of people who were killed, tortured, etc., while the Russians occupied part of the Ukraine. On the sports front, Roger Federer, the tennis champion, he is now resigning. The White Sox are still in the mix. They're 3 back as of Friday this morning. And a number of us will be watching the Bears and the Packers on Sunday night. Here in Chicago, sheriffs and police are spreading misinformation about the Safety Act, which passes broad sweeping police reform and ends cash bail. This whole thing about cash bail is something people should pay attention to. It's a step progressive. District attorneys, et cetera, are issuing around the country and pushing for. On the weed report, we've learned here that Beto O'Rourke in Texas is pushing for weed decriminalization. And close to home, over in the 48th Ward, the office on Sheridan, where Democratic officials from both the 49th Ward and the 48th Ward have offices. Somebody picked up a brick and threw it through a window. So I'm not sure what that's all about, but we do like the people who are over there, including Jan Schakowsky, Kelly Cassidy, etc. And I think that will be it for the first segment of the show. We're going to take a short musical break, and we're going to come back with Clem Balinoff, who is waiting in the wings. Be right back. It's time to bring on our first guest, longtime pal, Clem Balinoff from the Amalgamated Transit Workers Union, who is not only a union activist, but an election activist. And he's over there in Las Vegas for a convention. What are you doing over there? You doing any gambling?
You know, I'll tell you what. I've been here 2 days. I haven't put a penny in one of the slot machines or done any gambling at all. I'm here for the Amalgamated Transit Union Convention. We're a union of about 200,000. We represent bus drivers and train operators across the United States and Canada. And we're having our every triennial, I guess it's every 3 years convention. It starts next Monday, this Sunday, I guess it starts. And I'm here early because we have the General Executive Board, which I'm not part of, but they want me to come because I do, we talk about political things at times, and get to just see all of the top brass in the union.
Well, Clem, we've got you on because the last time I had you on, I like to get your overview on what do you think is happening around the country with elections. Yeah. And last time you were pretty gloomy about the Democrats' chances not only to hold the House or the Senate. And then I got an email from you saying, hey, time to do it again. Things are changing. So why don't we start off by you telling us how things have changed and what you are the issues that are driving the election, and some hope that those of us on the progressive side might be taking about current events and what's going on.
Sure. I am much more hopeful. And, last time when I came on, I thought, the Democrats, we were for sure going to lose the House. Senate was 50-50 that we could maybe take it or maybe not. Because, historically, the party in power has lost seats in the midterm elections. And this was complicated, by the fact this year, because it was a redistricting year, by the fact that the Republicans controlled more of the redistricting process. But when I talked to you last, there was polling showing the direction of the country, and it was headed, by a large margin. I think it was something like 45%, 50% of the people thought, that when the split was headed in the wrong direction. Now that's gone down. It's down to about 40%, 45%. So I think that's certainly direction. It's going to be helpful to Democrats. When you looked at Biden's performance rating, I mean, he was, the vast majority of people thought were disapproving of his performance. And it was like the difference between those that approved and disapproved was like, 18 or 19%. I don't remember the exact number because I don't remember that when we were talking, but now it's down to about 10 or 11%. So it's trending in the right direction. And a lot has happened since then. The Democrats, the price of gasoline has gone down. It's still not where it was a little over a year ago. But now like a year ago, the price of gas was somewhere around, average price of gas in the country was around $5.65. Now, it's been slightly less than in Illinois, don't get me wrong. Well, actually, in some places, it's actually been more. Now, I say the average is, across the country, is $3.71. So it's going in the right direction. But we did have not great economic news a couple of days ago. Everybody thought inflation would go down more because the price of gasoline had gone down, and that didn't quite happen, which is it's a little bit concerning. There's no question, because people a lot of times vote their pocketbooks. So I think that that's some of the reasons so those are some of the challenges for Democrats, and so the picture has gotten better. There's a lot of key issues. When I said that the Democrats historically have lost seats in the midterm election, and that's very true. But I will point out one. I think it was was it Nate Cohn in the New York Times, I think in the last couple of days, pointed out that in 1998 the Democrats actually won seats when Bill Clinton was president. And why was this? Because people perceived the fact that they had overreached when it came to the impeachment process, Republicans. And I think the same thing right now could be one of the biggest issues in this election. And you maybe want to have Terry Cosgrove on, because I'm sure he could do a great job on this, is going to be choice. It's come to the forefront because of the recent Supreme Court decision. But 61% of the voters across the United States support our women's right to choose. And you really need to look no further than like Kansas. You saw the overwhelming, 64% of people, rejected the amendment to ban abortions in Kansas. Women are registering to vote and turning out in turning out in higher numbers since that decision in primaries across the country. So I think, there's that, and there's really anger at the Supreme Court. So some people are starting to say, well, maybe you can look at 98 when there was a real reaction to a court decision or the impeachment decision. And so they picked up 5 seats then. I'm not predicting that right now. Don't get me wrong. But there is, I think that's a real, that's a real issue. And I mean, we can talk about other issues too, Michael, like the war in Ukraine, vaccines, all kinds of stuff like that are also, the new climate bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. So those are all, things like the war in Ukraine. It's taken a turn, in everybody's beliefs for the better. And they're giving Joe Biden and the administration higher marks, for what's going on. Vaccines have made it so that COVID is really for, all of us. And I've had 2 vaccines and 2 boosters already, probably have 2, but it's now something that in many people's eyes is in the rearview mirror. Gun control, although not the bill that, maybe I would have, certainly I would have, passed, but it does require tougher checks for those under 21, red flag laws, encouragement, and, more money for mental health. So there's a lot of, the administration is doing a lot of things, and that was a bipartisan bill in Congress. We look at climate. One of the questions is in off-year elections, will young people vote? Will the people that go to Loyola, will the people that go to Northwestern, will they go to UIC? DePaul, the Blue Demons, and Sister Jean, will they, or I guess she's Loyola. Loyola. Yeah, that's right. Somebody, I happen to know, I worked in a campaign. Let me digress for one sec. I worked in a campaign, of Abdel Nasser Rashid, who's going to be in the state legislature, first Palestinian Muslim. But one of our people that was doing fundraising for us, we saw him. He was the wolf. The mascot that runs around is the wolf. Yeah. So he looks the part, which is very interesting. But the question is, will young people come out? And, I think that there was some progress, certainly on climate, with that bill. Which and also with debt relief, that was some debt relief that for college college debt with Joe Biden. I think these are all things that are going to help Democrats, and they turn out. Look, I never know if they're going to turn out young people, but I hope so.
Clem, what do you think the impact of Senator Graham, who is such a dog, coming out proposing a national anti-abortion bill? And he's taking heat from Republicans who really don't want to talk about it.
Right. Well, I think that's really the case. I mean, I think Republicans would rather see that go away as an issue, not as one, where somebody's bringing it to the forefront. I think what some people think what he tried to do was put together a bill that, didn't include the total ban, for incest and rape and things like that. But now, this is not a good issue for Republicans. As I said, Kansas, you don't have to look any further than Kansas. You can look at the special election that they held in upstate New York for, God, I'm not going to remember the names, but recently where the Democrats won in a very, what was considered a close district. And they won, they won pretty well. So I think, that's why I think Republicans are mad. They just would rather, just like forget about it. And I think that they would rather be talking about things like inflation. One of the things is, and we all know this, people generally vote their pocketbooks. And it's like when we look at, the recent report on inflation, it's gas prices may have gone down. But in the last year, food costs are up 11.4%, gasoline 25%, housing 6-7%, medical coverage 4-5, maybe 5-6%. So really, there is a challenge. They're going to want to be talking about the reason that the Fed raises the interest rate next week. They're going to, and everybody says they're going to do it. It could be 0.75%. I think it's going to probably be more, but I don't know. And so no, I think Republicans would rather stay away from that as an issue, and that's why they're not happy with Lindsey Graham. And nobody's happy with Lindsey Graham.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Good.
Let's take a little, what are you focusing on in terms of your work? I know you actually have some elections. I know here in Illinois, we do have, one of the things we have to keep telling people about is there are 2 Supreme Court races for the state Supreme Court. That's important to share some info on.
Michael, I think you couldn't have hit the nail more on the head. We have learned, certainly from the recent Supreme Court decision and many others over the years, of the importance of the Supreme Court. In Illinois, if we do not win if Roxford and Mary Kay O'Brien do not win their seats, we lose control of the Supreme Court. And that means no matter what the legislature does with supermajorities and a Democratic governor, it can be turned around, and it will be turned around. These are activist judges that are going after, all the things that we believe in, whether it's environmental causes, whether it's, it's stripping regulations, whether it's choice, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And I have to say, to me, and I may have said this before, but I will say it again. In 2016, they did a survey of voters, and Republicans, over 60-some%, almost 70%, thought that one of the reasons for voting for Donald Trump, even if you didn't like him, was because of the Supreme Court. Democrats, we were saying, hey, happy days are here again, everybody. Before the election, nobody was talking about the Supreme Court. But in my life, I've oftentimes voted for the Democrat. I'm not always happy with them, but I always understand the importance, right? Look, I'm a little more, I'm certainly more left than most of the Democrats, even if the candidates for president. But I certainly vote for the Democrat because I understand the difference. And one of the differences really is the Supreme Court. And Democrats in that same election were, 15, 20, 30 points behind in terms of their, talking about the Supreme Court as an issue. And that should not have been, because we were just too, giddy about the fact we're going to beat this guy. And then we look at what 4 years, how bad it was. Maybe Democrats will, and independents can also focus on the insurrection in January 6th and Donald Trump. That would certainly be something that I think is important. But again, I really do go back to, the fact that the economy is always important and always on people's minds. It was in 92, they had the big sign in the Clinton offices that said, it's the economy, stupid. Well, in many respects, it still is. And we still have, about 54 days-ish?
Yeah, it's the economy. It's also really democracy. We really have to. And we're talking Supreme Court, not only on the national level, we need to have Democrats in and a Democratic president for any opportunities that come up. But in Illinois, there are 2 races that really will determine stuff in our beloved state, the Prairie State.
No, Michael, they said a truer statement could not be made. If anybody's thinking about, we're going to win the statewide offices, my state rep isn't in trouble, my member of Congress is going to be a Democrat, then get out and vote if you live in the first, or I think it's whichever one, the 2 districts. I don't know the numbers, but get out and vote if you live in those districts for our candidates for Supreme Court, because it really does make a difference.
Well, let's take a little tour around the country. And one of the issues that has gripped people, certainly from the right, has been immigration. And we know that, United States is a place people like to come from all over the world. There's a lot of climate disaster. There's a lot of political repression. They come to the United States. They cross the border in Texas or Arizona, and we find that the Texas governor now, a guy named Abbott, who we hope will lose. He's sending bus loads of immigrants to Washington and to Chicago, and also
Vineyard. I guess DeSantis sent him to Martha's Vineyard.
DeSantis. DeSantis, to me, I think is a really a dangerous figure because he has national ambition. He's probably a lot sharper than Trump, but clearly a right-wing figure. Right. Your take on him and
I think this is much. I agree with you. He's very, very dangerous. Probably more dangerous in many respects than Donald Trump because he's much more able to control himself, to control message. 4 years ago, he won by less than 1% of the vote in Florida. I'm not going to suggest he's not going to win this time, because of not only his national ambitions, but because the national media has given him a real platform. And he looks for stunts. This is certainly one of them. So like in that governor's race, people have said, "Oh, it's Charlie Crist. Can he win?" Probably not. He's 4 or 5 points down right now. I mean, even Val Demings is behind in the state. It's a tough state, for Democrats.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. I mean, you have all these people retire from New York, and you got young people down there.
Yeah,
Florida's split.
I don't get it either. I mean, when Democrats move from Illinois to go to the Sun Belt, many of them become Republicans or something. And I don't get it. I mean, hell, it's like as a retiree in Illinois, you pay no state income tax on retirement income. Now, I've always believed that's wrong. I think it should be based on the amount of your income, not the source of your income. But that's a different story. But it's like these are not. I don't get it. I really don't. But so I think DeSantis in that case is in good shape. I think that in Florida, I think it's a tough race for Val Demings. But there's a shot there.
If they could turn out the voters, it might be good.
Well, it's like I spent 2 months in Georgia in 2020 at November and December working with for the ATU with the Ossoff and Warnock campaigns. And as we talked this morning, the polling averages have the race between Walker and Warnock, pretty close, if not even right now. The governor's race with Stacey. Stacey's down, if you believe the polling, by about 4 or 5%.
I saw a poll this morning, though, the first Republican poll that showed her in the lead.
Well, I'm glad that I
don't know. I try not to get too excited about these polls either way.
Yeah. Well, I'm not excited about polls, but I do understand what they mean. And you have to look at like either Real Clear Politics or 538, where they have polling averages, because you may be a really great pollster and really understand what the electorate is going to be, because that's what polling is. You not only have to just find the 1,000 people, but you have to find the 1,000 people or 500, whatever number is, with the right demographic, the right age, the right gender, the right, ethnicity, all kinds of things. That's what goes into a successful poll. So I always look at polling averages. But one of the things that we had in Georgia on January 5th of 2021 was in the election there, when both John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock won, there was more money in that election than I've ever seen. I mean, there were people on street corners waving signs for Raphael Warnock on all 4 corners, block after block, and they were paid $15 an hour because there was just so much money in that race. It was the only thing in the country going. The whole world was there. I mean, and I say that seriously. I saw somebody's mail and they had postcards from 5 different states when you look at the postmark, and it was the same message. They were handwritten postcards. Thank you, everybody gets involved. Anybody that does make phone calls out there to other states, because that's really important. I mean, I think it's important that if in Illinois, if you have some time, spend some time with those Supreme Court justices. If you want to go somewhere else, look, a lot of good races right around Illinois. You can go up to Wisconsin. Mandela Barnes is in a really good race with a really bad guy, Ron Johnson, and he's in the lead. In the polling. I mean, he can win this thing. We need to make sure that people get out. Help people get out there. And from the north side of Chicago, the 49th ward, it's just a couple of minutes. It's quicker to go to Wisconsin than it is to go to Flossmoor. That's a fact. So if you want to go out and help out, that certainly is a place. We look, and Tony Evers certainly. We all remember Governor Walker over there. So Tony Evers has certainly been a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and you go east from there. There's Tim Ryan in Ohio as a Senate race.
That one's looking good, I think. Do you any sense of that?
It's looking better. I've talked to people on the ground in the campaign and things like that, and they're a little bit behind. They think right now, but he seems to be a really hardworking candidate, and the campaign is really well run. That's for sure. Pennsylvania, now that's one that's looking really good. Both Josh Shapiro in the governor's race. And I will tell you, his lieutenant governor candidate, Austin Davis, his father, Anki, is a bus driver in Pittsburgh, Local 85 of the Amalgamated Transit Union. We like that. And John Fetterman is just Dr. Oz is nuts. I don't know if you really want to have a fun time, Google Dr. Oz and either Jeff Van Zandt or Snooky Palooza, whatever her name is from Jersey Shores. They have really humorous ads talking about how the fact is he really doesn't live in Pennsylvania. He says, they say, like Jeff Van Zandt says, come on back, brother. He says, it's nice here on the shore. You don't live there. What are you doing over there? He says, come on over here. We have good time. And it's great. I mean, they're really funny ads. And I just love them. So I think like in the case of John Fetterman, we got a real shot for a pickup there, got a shot for, a pickup in Wisconsin, in Ohio, those are, right around here.
Any view on North Carolina?
Good race there. That one is very, very close. Sherry Beasley is really when I say neck and neck race, it's within half a point on polling. She's a former Supreme Court justice there, and working real hard. Some people are always say, well, it's all the way down there in the South. How the heck can you win in North Carolina? Well, we can win in these states. We have to get out to vote. I mean, this is, and if we don't think we can win, we're never going to win, because then people don't come out and vote. We need to.
Do you think, given the shift from the Democrats being predicted to lose a lot, to where the Democrats will probably hold the Senate, maybe get an advantage, and even have a shot in the House, do you think the Democrats are overly optimistic? We were certainly in 2016, and we took a big hit. What's your thoughts on optimism and pessimism?
Well, my optimism is what keeps me going. And I am sometimes more optimistic than others, but I have to say, I think the side just happens to be. I think that we will hold this. We will increase our numbers in the Senate. It will not be 50-50. It will be more than 50. We will have more than 50 Democrats. I really believe that. Now, the election's still 54 days away, so it could change. But I think in the House, I think we have we're getting to the point where I'm not going to say we're going to win, going to take seats, but I'll tell you what, we're not going to lose the 50 or 60 seats that they were predicting at the beginning of the year, or we're not going to lose the 40 seats that they were predicting just a couple of months ago. And I think that's a good thing. In the generic ballot test this morning, there's a story again in New York Times, and they were talking about how in the generic ballot test, now Dems are up by 2. If they say, hey, if you want the Democrat or Republican. Not quite sure what that means across the board, because a lot of times when districts have been drawn, they're so heavily either Democrat or Republican, and you sample them. It could skew it still, but I think that people are, we're feeling certainly much better than we were, much more optimistic. But then again, I'm going to tell you, it's like I'm going to be at a rally in Ohio on the 6th of October with Shapiro and Fetterman at one of our union halls.
That's in Pennsylvania. You said Ohio.
I'm sorry, in Pennsylvania. But I'm gonna stop in Ohio. But I am going to.
They're both important.
Yes, but I will be actually in Pennsylvania, and that's what motivates me is the fact that I think we have a real shot in these places, and it's worth my time to go there. Look, during the pandemic, to spend 2 months in Georgia, and they were not masking. Like our people, most of them were masking. Don't get me wrong, but that was a pretty tough thing because you just didn't know. But it was so important that we take the Senate. Yeah. Oh, yes. No, I'll tell you what, I have, I'm at the convention, and one of the things is that you're supposed to wear a mask on the floor, but it's awful hard in Las Vegas. I will tell you, you walk around, nobody wears masks. everybody was on the floors. Many of them are smoking cigarettes, and it's like, God, I mean, it's like, I can't imagine it's not a super spreader wherever you're at. But it's unfortunate. I did have COVID since last time we talked. So a friend of ours, actually, who is an infectious disease doctor, actually, I think lives in the 49th or 50th ward. But she was saying that, my immunity because of my vaccines and having it is pretty good right now. So I'm probably one of the safer people here. So that's
Clem Balanoff, we're going to have you back probably one more time before the election.
Michael, I promise you we can do that. And, I would just encourage one more quick thing. Absentee voting and non-election day. I think people ought to get out and vote and go right when they can. They should do it. Half the voters in this country will vote non-election day, more than half. So please get out and vote. If you live in the two Supreme Court districts, for sure get out and vote.
Illinois.
There we go. All right, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, good. This is good. And, I'm an optimistic dude, too. I'm overly optimistic sometimes. Yeah. But I think we have a shot of holding the House and improving the Senate. And the next thing we know, we'll be talking about the elections for alder people and the mayor of Chicago.
That's right.
We have a ways to go before that happens.
I'm glad you didn't want to talk about today, because I think we should just focus on November 8th. We can worry about February next after this is done. All right. Good stuff.
Thanks, Clem. Have a great time out there. I hope you make some money and you do good at the union meeting.
That's the important thing.
Okay, everybody, you are listening or watching the Live from the Heartland show for the week of the 17th of September. And we're going to come back. We're going to have a little music, I think, by the band Exit, the Crossing of Indian Tribes, who I brought to Chicago back in 1975. And we're going to do that because our next guest is Les Begay. He's been on the show before, and he's going to talk about Indigenous Peoples Day here in Illinois. So we'll be right back here with Live from the Heartland for the week of the 17th of September. We're here on the left end of your dial or at youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos, and also on CAN TV and Spotify and Google Podcasts. Be right back. Hey, we're back with more Live from the Heartland. That was the band Exit, Crossing of Indian Tribes. And we're really happy to bring on someone who has been here before talking about the same issue and similar issues, Les Begay. And he is the founder of the group here in Chicago, Indigenous Peoples Day. And there's been a movement to get Columbus Day renamed Indigenous Peoples Day. And Les is the board member in the past of the American Indian Center. He's a member of the Diné Nation. Some of you may know that as Navajo, but Diné means people, and that's what the Dinés call themselves. And he's on the governor's Arts Council, and he's done a lot of other stuff. He's quite a guy. Good morning to you, Les.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. So the reason we've got you here is because we have this ongoing issue. It's a movement around the country by many states and cities and towns and organizations to celebrate whatever the date is. Was it October 12th, I think?
Second Monday each October. It's the 10th this year.
And it's been all of my life, and that's like 80 years. It's been Columbus Day until our Native American friends have called for a new name, and it's Indigenous Peoples Day. Tell us about that fight, Les.
Well, it's been going on for quite a while. Actually in 1977, the United Nations International Conference of Discrimination Against Indigenous People said that it should be changed to Indigenous Peoples Day rather than Columbus Day. The first state to do that was South Dakota in 1990. Right now, there are 18 states that do celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day in replacement of Columbus Day, as well as the District of Columbia. So it's not something that has just happened recently, but many people think that that's the case, but it's not. It's been going on for decades for Native people.
And you had a kind of a split vote, right, on the what do we call it? The board, Cook County Board.
Cook County Board, yes. Yeah, there's 17 commissioners. We need 9 votes to pass it for Cook County. We had more votes at one time, but we've lost a few. We're down to about 5 right now. So we're still trying to get this accomplished. They voted unanimously for Juneteenth. And my question to them is, how is this any different? This is about racial equality. Why can we only muster 5 votes from this? So we're still doing that. We're working with the city. We're working with the state as well.
Our friend Larry Sufferton, is retiring from the Cook County Board, who's been great on a lot of issues, but was not so good on this issue. And I think he basically said, well, someone that he knows brought it, an Italian brought it to his attention. There was a lot of, when the Columbus statue was taken down, and a lot of demonstrations downtown about that. There's the Italian community and organizations always think, well, this is against us. Can you address that issue and why we should, just address it?
We say all the time, this is not an anti-Italian movement. It's an anti-Columbus movement. And if you look at the history, it's well documented in his own journals and others of the abuse that he had towards Native people. I mean, he took Native people back to Europe and enslaved them. The cross-Atlantic slave trade started this, and colonization, and enslavement, abuse, and forced assimilation all started. Once he got here. The other reason is we've said that if it's about Italian pride, then fine. We're fine with that. We have no issue with Italians. But just use somebody else. I mean, you could have Italian Appreciation Day, or you could have Da Vinci or somebody. But Columbus is not the one I don't think you want to use of it. I mean, he was sailing for Spain. He didn't actually get here, and you can't discover a continent that has millions of people here for hundreds of years before 1492.
I want to go back to the Cook County Board a bit. There's an election coming up in in February.
Yes.
And I know that for Larry's seat, we have a progressive running, and there probably are some other seats available. Can you give us a little more information on how the vote looks for the votes you need in order to pass this resolution?
I think that there are, and Larry's is one of them. I think that I've talked to that candidate, and I think that we have a good opportunity to pick up a vote there. I think we have an opportunity to pick up maybe three or four votes with the elections, and that would get us pretty close to 9, if not at 9. And but nothing's probably going to happen until next year at this point after the elections.
Yeah, and what do you? I know you have put together a long list of people supporting this move. And I would say you could certainly add this radio show to supporting it, and also Athletes United for Peace, some things I have some say in. And what are you asking these groups to do and people to do at this point to try to make it a reality?
We have about 200 organizations that are in support of us, and we have about 40 elected officials as well, including Maria Hatton in the 49th Ward. What we're asking them to do is contact your Cook County Commissioner, your alderman, and your state representatives to ask them to make this change. When we first started this with Cook County about 2 years ago, we were told that Cook County received more email contacts from our supporters, about 4,000, than any other in previous history, which was about 1,000. And these were all from their constituents. And supposedly they were supposed to listen to their constituents, but they really haven't made a movement on that, which is kind of surprising to me, particularly with that large of a email campaign going. You'd think that they would be a little more positive about making that change.
Well, let's hope they do. But let me ask, is there an initiative also in the city council, or something happened with that? We're talking about the Cook County Board, but what about in Chicago itself to change Columbus name to Indigenous Peoples Day?
Yes, there's a bill that's working its way through committee. Alderman Rosanna Rodriguez from the 33rd Ward started. it's kind of been sitting in committee, and it's up to the mayor has been quoted as saying that she's not interested in making that change, and that's a bigger and longer fight for us because of course there's more aldermen and that takes more votes. Same with the state. There's also a bill in state by Representative Delia Ramirez, and same goes there. It's going to be a bigger fight to get that change. But if we can get Cook County, I think it's a good starting point for us to go to the city and in the state.
Well, let me ask you about the mayor now, because they took down the Columbus statue, right?
Right.
It's been moved and she doesn't plan to put it back up, but she's not supporting the change in name?
No, and actually she has said, even though she formed the Monuments Committee, she's been quoted in the paper as saying, I'm not sure that I will take their advice. And she's also said, and a couple of times, 4 times actually this year, she's been quoted as saying, I think that I will bring the statues back out. So with this mayor, we're not sure, but she doesn't seem to be a supporter of ours as far as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Well, if I run into her, I'll put that in the word.
Okay.
What would you like people who are listening to the show to do to help this initiative? And then we'll move on to a couple other things.
Okay. Well, we did this last year and we had a pretty good turnout, and we're planning to do it again this year on October 10th, which is the second Monday of October. We're having a press conference rally at Potawatomi Park in Rogers Park, which will start at 11 o'clock. We have Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle will be speaking at that event. We had really good press coverage last year. We anticipate more coming this year. So if you can turn out on October 10th at 11 o'clock at Potawatomi Park, that would be a great start for us to push some of the Cook County commissioners and others to see that it's not just a native issue. It's an issue a lot of people are involved in and want to see happen.
Well, I'm really glad you gave us that information because Potawatomi Park is real close stomping grounds, and I'll be there and try to bring some people along. We saw a historic development in the U.S. government when Deb Haaland was appointed by President Biden to be the Secretary of the Interior. And she's the first Native person to have that role. I think probably the first Native person to have any real big role in the government. What does that mean to the Native community and to the country and its politics at large?
Well, one of the biggest issues that we have as Native people is that our history has been erased and it's not taught in schools. And, what we do know, what most people do know of Native people is what they've seen through, stereotypes on movies and television shows and in books. So what Deb Haaland has done is that she's brought us to the forefront now. And believe it or not, Michael, when I do a lot of talks, I get occasionally a question that I didn't know that there were Native people still alive today. Because we've done a great job, the media's done a great job of saying that after the 1800s, we were all killed off. What Deb Haaland has been able to do is make some of the issues that we have the public aware of those, like missing and murdered Indigenous women, boarding schools. The list goes on, but she's got the attention of a lot of people now based on the fact that we've got a Native person in there who's making these issues aware that many people didn't know about or they just forgot about.
How broad is basically the movement for Indigenous rights beyond the United States? We see in Canada the boarding school issue, and the Pope was just there. And we know that there are certainly really issues in Mexico and further south. You want to address that at all? Sure.
I think that South America and Canada have really owned up to the fact of what they did to Indigenous people, not only with genocide, but also with boarding schools. The Canadian government has paid some reparations. They created a board to look at what happened to these Indigenous kids in boarding schools. Same with South America. The United States is far behind. We've never owned up to the fact that there was a policy of termination and assimilation in the United States. And I don't know that I'll ever see that in my lifetime, which is, Deb Haaland has brought out the boarding schools. They're starting to do that, but there's a big difference between Canada and what they've done and Central and South America.
Back in the day, a few years back, I hung around with a lot of brothers and sisters from the American Indian movement, AIM. And I saw, them, my friends, they would be leaving town, they'd be traveling around the country, and Native American consciousness was on the rise. I wondered if you'd like to address the legacy of AIM and what other groups are out there that people should pay attention to that are working on Native issues, et cetera.
Well, AIM was, started back in the late 60s, and it started out of Minnesota. It was a great movement because it made people aware of the issues that Native people have and still have. One of the big problems that we have is that our numbers are low. We don't have, there's about 5 million Native people, enrolled Native people, and there's a difference in the United States. And 5 million people is not going to make much change unless you get non-Native people involved as well. And sometimes non-Native people just can't get on board with some of the things that we're trying to fight. And that's probably been one of the issues. But AIM was great because it did bring awareness. And we had some great leaders back then with Russell Means and Dennis Banks. And they're all passed now. And no one's really picked up the torch from that. Although there's still AIM chapters around, they just don't have the influence or the personalities that they had back in the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah, I remember we had John Trudell, who was the president or the leader of AIM for a while. He was at the Heartland twice. We had a lot of events. Tell us one more time, Les Begay, what the issue is for Indigenous people, but not only Cook County, but beyond.
Well, the changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day is really about no longer, erasing our history. And there are some that say, "Well, you're changing history." And said, "No, we're really not changing history. We're actually telling the truth." As I said, Columbus, he didn't make it this far north. His treatment of Native people was horrendous, and the story of Native people being here hundreds of years before 1492 and millions of them needs to be told. It needs to be told the right story. And by having on Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day is important. And some say, well, why, if we give it to you, why does it have to be on Columbus Day? And my answer is because on that day, everything changed for Native people. It's similar to having Juneteenth in April sometime. But why would you do that? Because Juneteenth is important, just like the second Monday in October is important, because that's when life changed, our world changed as Indigenous people. So it has to be on that day. And like I said, there's 18 states now. It's been around since the 70s, and there's no better time than now with the talk and the change in the U.S. about racial equity. My question is, why are we always left out when it comes to racial equity? We're the forgotten ones that no one talks about, and we don't get a seat at the table.
We're going to have you back to talk about whatever happens in the months to come. And I do want to share, I had a couple of quick thoughts. Not only do we want people to remember October 10th, Potawatomi Park, there'll be an 11 o'clock rally around this issue. I just remembered a couple books that really influenced me. If you have any doubts about the way Native people were treated, just read some Cormac McCarthy about what went on in Mexico with the slaughter of Indians. And my dad turned me on to a book by Howard Fast called The Last Frontier. And it was a band of Native people moving north, trying to get to Canada. And it really set a tone for me as a young guy. I've long looked to the Native community. I still like the name Indians, but you can't wear that anymore. It's an issue that I think is real important. It's symbolic of where the whole country goes. If we can't address what happened to our Indigenous people here, we're not going to be able to address a lot of things that affect us all in many other ways. Any parting shots you want to put in here or parting words?
No, I would just say that thank you for the plug. We need you need your support on October 10th. And I think, having the park full of supporters would be a great message to the elected officials that this needs to be done.
Thank you for all your good work, and I look forward to seeing you again in person. And get a hold of us anytime you think there's something that needs to be shared.
Hey, thank you,
Okay.
Michael.
Thank you very much. You are listening to Live from the Heartland here on the left end of your dial. On the radio, it's 88.7 Saturday mornings, 9 to 10. We're also on youtube.com/Heartland Media. We're on Can TV, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And we're going to take a short musical break and we'll be right back with Michael Piranha McGraw, all the way from Honolulu with his tune, the news tune that he's going to do once a month. Hey, we're back with the final moments of Live from the Heartland for the week of September 17th. I'm Michael James, and it always brings me great pleasure to bring on one of my oldest pals, not my oldest pal, but a longtime pal. We met each other in the Rising Up Angry days, the Michael Piranha McGraw, and he is out there in Honolulu where he has been for many moons. And we've been talking about bringing him on with a thing we're going to call News Tunes. And that would be once a month that he takes his political acumen and his musical ability and skills and packs them all together in a song for us. So what do you got for us, Piranha?
Well, good morning.
Good morning. It's early out there.
It's early. I'm staring into, we live up straight up the mountain from Diamond Head Crater. So I'm looking into the crater for inspiration. And I see an invading army of many troops and helicopters. I'm kidding. It's beautiful and quiet out there. Only noise is my cats. I'm very happy to be asked on. Thank you. And I miss you. And I know I'm going to see you over the winter months. So
you are. I swear to God, if I'm still alive, and I hope I will be, I'm coming to Hawaii.
If you die, I'll kill you. I'll tell you right now. You better hang in there, pal.
I will. I promise.
Well, we're probably the most forgiven of all the weather regions on the planet right now. Our weather, we're droughting a bit more than we should be, but our weather basically never changes. And we've had really, really good weather. It's like our yards are a little muddled because we're conserving water, but we're under no mandates. We're always 69, 70 degrees at night and 84 degrees during the day. Our weather's just perfect. It's the best on the planet. And that's why people like to come here. No matter what time of year, it's pretty much the same. But it's getting funky. We're having issues with some lead in the water and some stuff going on with the military and just shifts. I'm sure that we are going to suffer the consequences of what the big weather sweeps that's going on in the mainland that's negative. I'm sure it'll work its way out to the mid-Pacific. So this is a song from my last album. The album is Diamond Head Road. The song's called Tilted Halo. And a local Samoan lady said we were talking about the way the planet's been changing and challenging and hurting our urban areas. And she says, because the planet has a tilted halo, she said to me and walked away. And I said, that's great. So I wrote this song. And here it is. It's called Tilted Halo, and it's from Diamond Head Road. Somewhere north of San Antone, somewhere south of heaven, just outside of comfort in the shade of a broken tree, Della vainly searches for a river full of ink so she could get to writing all the things she would not think. And her story rambled crazy like a twister in slow motion. Everything came all at once, then nothing came at all. A shimmer of uncertainty in a glass of bourbon said, drink me, I can't set you free, but you won't feel the fall. So raise your glass to a light outside the tunnel. Raise your glass to a beacon on the shore. Hey, Mother Earth, We see your sense of humor. Your tilted halo leans away from us more and more and more and yeah, a little leaguer leaves behind a season full of friendship. A family man dies alone and no one can come near. We have watched the tumbling dice land against our favor, and Dallas ink from the riverside is washed out by her tears. So raise your glass to a light outside the tunnel. Raise your glass to a beacon on the shore. Hey mother, we see your sense of humor and your tilted halo leans away from us more and more and more and nothing ventured, nothing gained. Enter at your risk. The price of wholeness is detained by a stop at this. Some won't look, some will stare, but I have found there's something there, and you can find me searching for salvation in a kiss. So raise your glass to a light outside the tunnel. Raise your glass to a beacon on the shore. Hey mother, we see your sense of humor. Your tilted halo leans away from us more and more, more and more.
Hey, Michael Perrana McGraw, we want to thank you for getting up early, and we'll have you back next month, early in the morning. So
When you're out here with us, I'm waking you up every day at 4 a.m., just so you know.
I'll be glad to get up and if I'm out there, when I'm out there. Okay, we want to thank everybody who makes this show possible. We want to thank not only Emilio Davis, but Imani Warren, Lynn Orman, Katie Hogan, and Tom Clark, and of course our home base, WLUW 88.7 or WLUW.org, as well as CAN TV. We'll have some wonderful guests next week. We hope you'll be here with us. Spread the word about the show. You guys all do good in the world because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. So all power to the people. Over and out.